So maybe like while the technical teams solve their problems, and I think it would be very nice that we can start with the introduction for the head referees. First of all, like my name is Dawei Lin. I'm the coach of Alma Robotics, and this week has been very inspiring week. Is the teams and the referees are coming together. I think this never happened before, and all four Maryland referees that available and talk to teams in a different setting. So we're very looking forward to this, and I want everybody to have kind of open mind and talk to them to see how wonderful our head referees are. And so maybe we have a round of self-introduction. How about we start with Caitlin?
Okay. I'm Caitlin. Well, you can see on the screen, I've been involved in robotics for about 13 years, VEX, C-Perch, FTC, FLL, all of the above. I was on Cubics when we won the World Championship, and I'm currently a senior food science major at University of Maryland.
Randy?
Randy, you want to go?
Randy, take yourself off mute.
So you're maybe go. Hi, Randy, you're on.
Yeah, well, how about now? I'm getting a
We can hear you.
Yeah,
okay.
Great.
Someone muted me while I was unmuting. But anyway, this is Randy Rupp, refereeing for 4 seasons in FTC, head ref for the past 2. Caitlin's the youngest ref. I'm the oldest ref, and she's lapping me in terms of years in FTC. I've got 7 years in FRC. My son got me involved. But what I bring to the table is I've been reffing soccer for 11 years, and it's very comparable, reffing soccer games and reffing FTC. The way I reffed, I always wanted to make sure the kids knew before they were getting fouls that they were close, and that's exactly what FTC wants us to do. Try to keep them away from getting the fouls. So, my soccer experience has helped a lot. That's it.
Great. So we're just in the clockwise order, Paul.
All right. My name is Paul Merkham. I've been involved in FIRST robotics since roughly about 2006 when my son joined the RoboBees 836 FRC team, and I got excited and joined as a mentor the next year and mentored for another 7 years or so until I went to college to get my master's. And since then, I have been volunteering. I volunteered as inspector, and now I'm a referee for FTC. So I really enjoy doing the competitions. It allows me to be a kid and brings back my engineering side back that I like to do.
Great. Okay, now last but not least, the king of the referee from Maryland.
Hey guys, I'm Jeff Kelbeck. I am the senior head referee, or technically the king of the referees, if you go with my official title. I am a alum of an FRC team when I was on the team in 2002 to 2004. I have a bachelor's from Penn State and a master's from Johns Hopkins, and I have been volunteering with FTC basically since FTC started.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So I think for the interest of the people who are maybe from FLL or maybe the first time to hear about FTC, and since this is off season, so will somebody can give a brief overview of what the general match is about?
Yeah, I actually set up a Slido poll if people want to answer that quick. I'm not sure if it's active yet, Heather. But we set up a Slido poll quick to see what the demographics are
Okay.
of who we're talking to. Let me see if it's up. I don't think it's up yet. There we go. So if you're a student, a parent, or a mentor, and then what your FTC experience is. So if you're new, first, second, third year, and the link to that's in the group chat.
You hear a cat? That's mine.
You hear bark, that's probably mine.
So now we know what the head referees do when they're not refereeing.
We all have pets.
Yeah, we coach other small creatures that are hard to control.
I heard cats.
Okay, so new to FTC. And then the student, parents, or mentors.
So we got four participants.
Yeah.
So for people who are not familiar with the Slido, you can go to the chat box and just click on the link, and then you'll be able to click the poll, and so they can give the referee information how they're going to respond to it. Okay.
Got one.
Okay, so a lot of new to FTC.
Yeah, and now people, I think,
Okay,
get the link.
okay, and then student, mentor, and parent. This one I'm interested to know because this will determine how we answer questions.
It looks like we have a lot of students.
Oh.
Nice.
Okay, that looks good.
Any more Slidos?
Okay, so mostly students. We can move on to the general match info since we do have a lot of new people. If that's good with you, Dawe.
Yeah.
Okay, so we head to the next slide. We just have a general info about matches. So if you're new to FTC and you've just come from FLL, the competitions run very different. So you'll have matches that are head to head against people. So it's 2 robots on an alliance against 2 other random robots going against each other. And it's like you're competing live against other people. Jeff, do you want to start with match setup and play?
Yeah, sure. So like Caitlin said, it's two teams versus 2 teams. Whichever team you're put on the same alliance as, this time will likely, for your next match, be one of your opponents, or the next time you see them, they will probably be an opponent. It is completely randomized by the computer. You're allowed to have, in general, most years it's 2 drivers plus a coach at the field, and each team has that. So you have 2 from each team plus a driver, plus a coach. That's 6 people in each driver station driving the robots. You set up robots on the field. How you do it changes every year a little bit. But basically you set it up according to how the rules say. And then we give a 3, 2, 1, go, and we start a 30-second autonomous period, which is very similar to how how FLL works, except for the fact that you're not the only one on the field now. Now it's you plus 3 other robots. And there's a real likelihood that you guys will run into each other, or if you were depending on a stack of something or balls being over here or whatever, there's a pretty good chance somebody else is going to run into those accidentally or on purpose and throw them off. And it could royally just screw up your whole plan. So that's where building a resilient robot comes in handy. and making your programming a little fault tolerant.
Mm.
Because I
Yeah.
guarantee there will be a lot of faults.
Yeah.
After that
And
second autonomous period, we transition into a driver control period for 2 minutes. And that's where you pick up a remote control and you drive your robot for the next 2 minutes, trying to score points in any which way you can while also not breaking any rules if you can. And while you're doing that, you'll want to talk to your alliance partner, the other team that's working with you, to get all these points. Because sometimes you'll be really good at lifting something and they'll be really good at scoring something. So you want to work together and figure out where the synergies are, where you guys can collaborate and work well together. And then normally the last 30 seconds or 15 seconds of the match is end game. That's where there's a whole lot of bonus points to be had. In the past couple of years, a lot of games have been won entirely based on what happens in end game.
yes. And another big aspect of the game that changed a few years ago is the live scoring. So, and we'll get into this more with types of referees, but it's important to remember that the scores will be changing during the game. We'll be scoring it live. And then there's final tally ups with all the penalties, and then the final score is posted. So the score will be constantly changing and is never official until the final one comes up after the match ends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we can go into different types of referees and what we do.
Yeah, that's a good topic.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, you want-
Yes, referees?
Yeah.
All right, so what referees do and the types of referees. So we're not supposed to be like the cops all the time. Well, we do act like the cops all the time. And we're not out to hit people with 10,000 different rules being broken. Much like Randy had introduced earlier, we want to warn the teams before they break a rule. If they're getting on the border of doing something, we have a talk with those teams. So a referee is really there to not be a coach, but to help mentor and help encourage teams to do the gameplay that was intended by the game designers. There are penalties for things for how your robot is set up when you get on the field. Where do you place it? Do you touch your controls before when we randomize? Who can turn what on during autonomous? And who can control what when you're in the teleop mode for 2 minutes? The other thing is that the referees really set the pace for the competition. So we were there to make sure teams get to the field in a timely manner. And we are also like safety police, because we have to make sure eyeglasses, safety glasses, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
toe shoes, nobody reaching into the field, none of the robots reaching outside the field unless that's the game, or tackling one of the other attendees at the field there. So when you go and see a match, we typically have at least 4 referees on a field. One of the referees will be holding the tablet, as Caitlin mentioned, for live scoring. So they will be standing in one place, looking straight down, hopefully near where all the big points are being made. The other referee can be standing next to him, telling them when scores are being made or when penalties are being made. And they can move around the field to see if anybody's trying to sneak in any penalties or do something that's inappropriate or unprofessional in the gameplay. With each field, or for the competition, there's a head referee. And King Jeff, the referee, can tell you that's where you go to the question box. If you ask questions at the field, we can probably answer yes, we saw it there, no, didn't happen. But what the score is, we don't know what the score is because all we do is put in the tablet what we see and what we have experienced. So if you have questions, you go to the question box and the head referee will come over. Could be one of us, could be Jeff there as well. And they will ask, and when we see people come to the box, we expect to have just the student from the team come there. We only need one student. There's two alliances, one student from each of the alliances. We don't expect to see the parents. And if you feel that what you did was right and we penalize you, then we expect you to have a forum posting and or the manual there to help support your point. So that's what the head referee, they are empowered to take a look and they'll come back to the referees on the field, ask questions to verify some information and make a decision whether or not a penalty should be made, taken away, and the score gets updated. So those are some of the things that we do. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, let's talk about forum updates and things like that.
Okay,
You know,
that's another thing. You got it, Randy.
What's that?
You got it.
Yep. So the referees have all kinds of extra training, right? Besides reading manual number 2 and manual number 1 each season, there's a whole extra manual for referees and head referees.
Hey, Randy, that part you just skipped over with the manuals, we got at least half the people here have never done FTC. Can you talk about those manuals first?
Sure. All right. So manual number 1 is usually the same year in and year out, and it's got, you know, basic things that don't change year to year. Even manual 2 will have some of the rules that don't change. So we have 3 safety rules, and those 3 safety rules pretty much stay the same every year, and they're documented in manual 2. And then we have 30 general rules that usually don't change from year to year. Once in a while, they'll reorder them and they'll throw in an extra one or something like that. But then the second part, or the most important part of Manual 2.1 explains the game this year, and it also introduces game-specific rules. So generally, your robot shouldn't be reaching outside the 12 by 12. I don't even know if FLL people understand. Every year, the field is 12 feet by 12 feet, and the only thing that changes is what's inside. And the game-specific rules and some of the earlier parts of Manual 2 have how do you play the game this year. And the thing that gets the referees in trouble is the original, you know, when, let's say in September, when the game gets announced, the Manual 2 might not be as specific or, you know, catch as many weird things as they might want. So during the season, they'll put updates to the manual. There's forums where people can ask questions, and we need to pay attention to those. And then there's also referee forums, very specific to the referees, where we can ask questions to the head referee, a gentleman named Mark Edelman, lives out in the West Coast. He's the supreme head ref, and he'll answer, and he's also part of the committee that designs things like that. So you know, the question is, how do the referees come up with these answers? You know, as we're reffing, you know, why are we making these decisions? There's some back story. You know, there's you know, the referee form is really trying to make the whole country referee the same way. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's important, but the teams usually, you know, don't see that. They only see the team forms where, you know, maybe modifications or explanations of the rules are honed. But yeah, that's probably the most interesting thing I think people might want to ask us tonight is, you know, how did you decide to do that? Well, we've got the background from the forums that you don't see, and there's a monthly call once every month. There's a live call that we call into, and we can trade questions with the, head referee, Mark Edelman, or, just, kibitz between ourselves. What did you see at your competitions? What should you be aware of? The people that have earlier competitions, sort of spread their knowledge of, hey, watch out for this, guys. So more background on how referees, get knowledge on each year's game. I'll stop talking for a while.
Yeah, and to jump onto that, like Randy mentioned, because there is a forum and it's changing, and there's a referee forum, and we're all trying to be consistent throughout the entire world, sometimes rules will change during the season. And that's why I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. I saw a question on the Slido about, do you find asking questions, I think it was about a penalty or way disrespectful? And we always want you to ask a question. If you think something's wrong, ask a question. If you think that we gave you too many points, too few points, or a penalty was counted wrong, it can never, ever hurt to ask a question. If you come to the question box with one student and you ask it to us, we'll always answer it. We want you to know why you got the score you did and what you can do to fix it next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one thing I want to also mention, since we did both FLR and FTC, and I think one point I pick up is that the safety is the most important reason that the referee look onto. I'm wondering if some of you that can give some general overview, like what the safety violations you see of this season, what advice you want to give to the team about that, especially the people may not realize what type of safety they the risk of the safety that they may experience.
It's always the same. The kids show up without their glasses on, their safety glasses, right? That's one of the safety rules. There's another one, about, reaching outside, and hitting someone outside the 12 by 12 arena, and, doing
it's unsafe robot damage to the field.
Right.
And that one's probably the least common, just because it's just the robot's really damaging the field in a way that the team could control.
Now, that's not to overlook. There are about 30, I believe, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong about this, rules about safety specifically with building the robot, which all fall into part one of the game manual.
Yes, that's part of the robot inspection.
Right. And pretty frequently, kids or teams will make modifications to their robot during the event, and they have already passed inspection first thing in the morning, and something broke, or they figured out a better way to do something, so they make their improvement, and it turns out to be something that an inspector never would have approved, because it's dangerous for one reason or another, or it uses illegal parts or whatever. Either way, that's a massive safety thing. Well, it's the same sort of basic safety stuff that you would expect at any large event. Don't run, don't shout fire, unless there actually is a fire. If you make contact with anything outside the field, that'll be a big issue. If it looks like you're causing intentional damage or unintentional damage, but it's caused by you repeatedly doing the same thing, those are safety issues that we see a decent amount of. And we all take way too many hours out of our lives to volunteer for this, because we love seeing you guys succeed. And yes, we truly do love answering your questions. So, I mean, one thing we really have zero tolerance for is the potential that a student, parent, or volunteer gets hurt. There's going to be hopes and dreams crushed on the field by playing by the rules. We don't need to go outside the rules for that.
Right.
Yeah, there's a reason the safety rules are the first ones on the summary.
Yeah. Thanks very much for the answer. And then I think there is a lot of questions now. It's already in Slido. Maybe we can switch to that to see what the people are interested in.
Yeah, I can ask the top one.
How does
tiebreaker points?
Let's see if Heather can
I
make a
can.
disclaimer of the questions.
Welcome to one of the most contentious things in FTC. Caitlin, you want to take it?
Yeah. So TBPs, I want to make sure I'm giving them the correct full definition, but because ranking, they just switched them 2 years ago. So my
You want to do a minute of reading? I can go on to the next question.
good idea.
Okay. So, have we ever given out a red or a yellow card? If so, what is the situation? So, yeah, red or yellow cards have only existed in FTC for the last 5-ish years, but because I volunteer in Virginia and in Maryland and DC, and also with the World Championship and when they existed, the Super Regionals, I've given out my share of cards. I have never given out a red card. And if we give out 2 yellow cards, that becomes a red card. I have never given a team a second yellow card. But I have given out quite a few yellow cards. Normally, it's for a team doing something unsafe. So the robot reaches outside the field. First of all, robots aren't supposed to reach outside the field at all. That being said, stuff happens. Sometimes we can be a little bit flexible about some things. So if you reach outside the field by like a 1/4 inch or something and you pull back into the field really quick and you didn't make contact with anything, we can let it slide. But the second you make contact with something outside the field, or you go more than like 1/2 inch outside the field, or for feeling generous, 1 inch or 2 outside the field, yeah, we're going to penalize it. And the only penalty we're allowed to apply is a yellow card for that. And we disable your robot. Then there's also some rules that specifically come with yellow cards. For example, this year, if you intentionally drove through, there was a little corner of the field that was designated for a human player, for a human being to actually put stuff down onto the field. And there were a whole lot of safety rules around what could and couldn't happen in that box and when things could happen. If it looks like you intentionally drove into, I'm going to call it your opponent's safe zone, and you guys did it intentionally, that is supposed to come with a yellow card. There's always possession rules. If we catch you breaking the possession rules too many times, eventually that leads to a yellow card. There's a lot of, or field damage is another big one. If you set up your gear ratios wrong, your wheels can wind up digging into the field. Or in previous years, we've had buttons on the outside of the field, on the wall of the field, but inside the field, that you had to press. And they were a little sensitive. So in some years, we would have teams ramming at full force repetitively into the buttons. We called them beacons. I don't know if anybody on the call remembers those. I think last time we had them was 3 years ago. May they rest in peace.
Yeah, they ate batteries like crazy.
Rest in pieces, you mean?
They were sensitive.
Any other experience giving out yellow card or red card?
Yes. So everything that I just listed is an instance of where I have given out yellow cards. I've never given out a red card. I don't think anybody in Maryland has given out a red card.
I have not given out any red cards, and usually when I give a yellow card, it's usually snaps if the team responds to that very strongly and want to make sure that never happens again, because they don't want to, because a red card is a instant disqualification. It's very serious. So
I have your tiebreaker points answer now.
Okay. So go on.
So when you have matches, you get ranking points and then tiebreaker points. Those are the things that determine what your ranking is, 1 through whatever amount of teams there are to competition. So ranking points, you get 2 for a win, 1 for a tie, and 0 for a loss. And essentially your ranking points is the average of those 2 1s or 0s you get for each match. And then the tiebreaker points is the score of the lowest, the losing alliance.
What's the point of them?
Sorry, what?
What's the point of tiebreaker points?
I'm getting there. And so by giving the lowest score, they're essentially determining how hard the match was to play. So if your opponent had a really high score every time, they have really high tiebreaker points, that they're assuming that you scored better, so you should be ranked higher.
So it's a way to break the ties, right?
Yeah.
After you play 5 matches, a lot of people could have 10 points. It's a way to break the ties to say, all right, who's the number 1 alliance? Who's the number 2? Who's the number 3 for when we get into the elimination rounds? That's what tiebreaker points are.
Where did you find the definitions of tiebreaker points and the explanation?
Game Manual Part 1.
Right.
That is something, if anybody's interested in how any of that works, there is there's almost a full page written up about ranking points and tie-breaking points and several examples. I highly recommend you read it. It is very helpful.
Yeah, it's really important to know as a team, because that's how you know which teams are scoring better or which maybe not be scoring better, even if they're ranked up high.
Right. Now, actually, our team is the third year for FTC, and actually, really, this year we began to understand what the TBT was, the tiebreaker points, and I think that the strategy that is useful for our team to play is that if we know we're going to win, we will help the opponent to gain point. So we will not really steal their stones. We want them to gain more point. So then we can have a higher TBP. So that's the things that we haven't got didn't understand before.
Back in my era in Rescue, we used to score when it was legal. According to the game manual, we used to score in the opponent's bucket to give them extra TBPs, because it is a viable strategy if you need to be ranked up higher. Everything's a strategy as long as it fits within the manual and the forum rules.
That being said, they did add over the summer, because there was some controversy at Worlds last year, that it is ungracious and unprofessional to play beneath your abilities.
Yes, you should never downpad your score. You could help the other alliance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think any points other people want to add to answer the question?
I was just going to say, in the rules really limit teams and whether or not they can help their opponent to score. So that is a challenge. So they have to look at the rules and see what's legal and not legal. Because they've been getting more. It's getting to the point if you drop something into the opponent's thing, even though it's their scoring thing, or you touch their scoring thing, you automatically penalize you. You have to be careful. Each game is different.
Like in this year's game in Skystone, you can't enter their foundation, so you shouldn't try to score their Skystones. As long as you read the rules fully and it makes sense.
Yeah, very nice. I think let's go to the next question. It's very interesting, like we have technology available. Why the referees are not using that to referee a match?
I hear this almost every other match. Don't you?
Yeah, the answer to this, there's a very simple answer of because there's a rule that says we can't. That's the simple answer. The reasoning behind it is, for anybody who's ever watched an NFL game and seen almost every single play get under review, and sometimes the review takes 15 minutes, we are constantly running behind schedule at first games, at first events, whether it's FTC, FLL, FRC, whatever. We're always behind schedule. I have been at events where we didn't finish matches until after 9 p.m., which makes everybody miserable, because I know I typically show up around 6 or 7 a.m. And then we still have to tear down the field and hand out awards, and yeah, everybody gets cranky about that. So in a nutshell, it's just a practical thing. If we looked at one person's video or photos, we'd have to look at everybody's, and we just don't have time in the day for that. Which winds up, resulting in, there's no other way to put it, some bad decisions, because we didn't see what we needed to see. But, unfortunately, that is the cost of doing business.
Yeah, I think that, that's I think that's reasonable. And the next question is pretty interesting. I think we're done with this question. That is that, do you feel people ask questions that that may let you feel disrespectful. Randy, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I'll take that one. No, as Caitlin said earlier, go ahead and challenge us on the scores. Especially this year, it was really important to get a lot of autonomous points. And sometimes the scorekeeper just doesn't get the score in there correctly. And, the rule is, you got to be there within like 3 matches. So it's almost still fresh in our mind. I know we corrected a lot of scores this year in the autonomous because, as a head ref, I don't have the tablet, but I'd look really quickly up at the live scoring at the end of the 30 seconds. And I knew what, each individual thing would score. And I'd say, oh, look, they got all the points in. And if I saw anything missing, it's like, all right, I got to go talk to my scoring refs after the match and see, why did we miss something? Because I know that scored in. And, doing the live scoring, the scoring ref can fix it at the end of the match before it gets submitted. So a lot of times we did, I just whisper in there, hey, what happened? You didn't get this in there, and we'd fix it. But a lot of times where we missed it, and we'd go back and I'd talk to the refs, the 4 refs, and they say, yeah, I saw them both. And it was just a lot of times, their thumbs didn't get in the right spot to register a score. So we do not consider it disrespectful if you're questioning the score, because we want you to get all the points that you deserve. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
I would go beyond that and say, I don't find questions typically disrespectful at all. I think I've been doing this over 10 years. I can only remember one student who's ever actually been disrespectful to me, and that person was being a complete jerk. So don't be a jerk. And we are more than happy to answer your questions about more than just score. Like if you don't understand a rule, or if we told you you're doing something that's illegal and you don't understand what you were doing, please come ask us about it. The whole reason we're there is to help you guys get better. If you come back and make the same mistake, normally you'll have 5, 6, or 7 matches in a day. If you make the same mistake and break the same rule in every single match, technically we're supposed to call that a non-gracious professional behavior and give you a major penalty for it, in addition to whatever other penalties are supposed to be. So we want you to stop making mistakes. We want you guys to play well, earn points, don't lose them.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. I think this time this year is the first time I volunteer as a referee, and I just see from the own experience, like how forgiving the referees are to allow a student to make mistakes. I think that's a wonderful thing.
So one thing that has left a bad taste in some students' mouths when they've come up to ask questions, specifically about score, we addressed this a little bit earlier. I'm the head referee for the state. I don't know the point values of everything. I know that there's a checkbox and we hit the checkbox. And it asks how many blocks or balls or whatever got into the right place. And we enter a number. We do plus or minus till it gets to the right number. Is each ball or stone worth 3 points or 5? I couldn't tell you. So I'm more than happy to show you that. But if you're telling me that, you should have 15 points after scoring 3 things, but you didn't get 15 points, chances are somebody's doing you're using the wrong number. It's they might not be worth 5 points apiece.
Mm-hmm.
And
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great. I think another point I want to make is that the Maryland only have 4 head referees. So the next year, if people want to go to qualification, probably you will see one of them. And now they tell you that please ask questions. Okay, so let's move to the next question.
If a referee makes a bad call, how should a team get it resolved? Will other referees get involved? For example, blocking penalty when the robot died, something. So Paul, if a referee makes a bad call, how should a team get it resolved?
Well, they go to the question box. They talk to the head referee. They explain, they tell them what match they were in. They say, they talk about the rule, and they tell their case, saying whether or not they qualified or met the conditions of getting the penalty. Maybe they got hit with the yellow card and wasn't necessary. Maybe it should have been a major penalty instead, or a minor penalty. Maybe the other team did something that was not caught by the referees, that we did not take into consideration. The other referees, when you see getting involved, it's more or less a discussion to verify the facts as we see it. And then the head referee can make a decision whether a correction is needed or not.
Yeah, so what the head referee says is final, but they will talk to the other referees to see what they saw to make sure all four agree. And sometimes just to check and make sure that what they said is right. You have to remember everyone's a human being and we're just trying to make the right call at the end of the day. So I may go to Jeff and say, hey, this is the right call for that, right? And then he'll say yes. So we're usually just checking it with either the people who were in that match and who saw it, or with our head referee.
And somebody mentioned the question box. What is that?
So the question box is a box typically somewhere towards the center of the fields. Between the two fields that you'll be playing on. And it's taped out on the floor. Typically, it has a big question mark in it. If you have a question about rules or about something that happened in the match and you want to talk to the head referee about it, or an FTA, who are the tech support people, you can come up there and the head referee or FTA will answer your question, will address your question. If we know the answer off the top of our heads, we will give you the answer right off the top of our heads. If you're saying that, we didn't see something that we should have called, then yes, we will get the other referees involved. And if at least we will hear what the other referees have to say and make a decision based on that. If nobody saw anything, if we hear at least one referee who saw what you're saying and none of the other refs saw anything, as long as that one referee is sure about what they saw, we'll generally give it to you. But these are more rules of thumb than, things that are carved in stone.
Okay. So shall we go to the next question?
Has a team ever been rude to you?
I know no one's been rude to me. I'm always impressed, coming from soccer, I'm always impressed how polite FTC kids are and how honest they are. They're great. Whereas in the soccer world, I can't necessarily always trust what people are telling me. But in terms of being rude, no one's ever purposely rude to me.
I have not experienced anybody being rude. If people come into the question box, that's part of the procedure. That's the place to be in, and they state the case, and that's all. That's what they do, and have a discussion. And the referee talks with them, does the best that they can in explaining the rule. I mean, sometimes they get a penalty and they didn't feel like they should have gotten, but we explain to them, sorry that you did this, and that's how it came about. Please don't do it again. Those are the type of conversations we often have.
Yeah, I think what could often be confused for a team being rude or a student being rude is that, this is a big deal for you guys. It's a big deal for me too. I mentor a couple of teams also. You guys put a ton of hours into this, and lots of literal blood, sweat, and tears into these robots. And you will rightfully so be really excited or really ticked off at something that happened in a match. And that's, right when you're trying to control your excitement or anger is typically when we see you, when you come to the question box. So, sometimes people have problems with the tone or volume of their voice just because they're that excited. We can typically tell the difference between being rude and just a kid who needs to get to the bottom of something.
Caitlin, do you want to add your experience on it?
Everyone said everything good. I mean, FTC kids are they're almost always gracious and professional, and keep being the way you are because it's working.
Very cool. Okay, so the next question.
Is this a serious question? Why are
I'll answer it.
This question, there's 2 votes on it.
Okay. So
Because of robot inspection.
why are combustion engines dangerous? Because they're powered by gasoline. They are powered by literal explosions.
And it's illegal to have liquids on your robot, therefore, through the transitive property, they're illegal.
Yeah, I think Jeff, you have to be conscious that we have a lot of innovative kids here. They think out of the box. Yeah, they see the SpaceX rocket is going to go to Mars.
I see somebody probably trying to argue this point that they're legal in daily life. This is where I'm just going to come down and say, why are they illegal and dangerous? Because we didn't write the rules, and the people who do say it is.
Our slide note says it is a serious question, so it was a serious question.
So there are some questions that are beyond our powers. There is a group that sits all over the country called the Game Design Committee. It's 6 people. They write the rules of every single game every single year. They're the ones who come up with how everything works. If you post a question in the forums, it will be a member of the Game Design Committee who answers it.
I wouldn't be surprised that sometime in the future they may have one season where, whether it be FRC or FTC, where they'll try to make it legal to use some sort of engine that they feel is safe.
So I think in the old days of FRC, when it was the only program, and I'm talking about like the early 90s, I think there was a year where they allowed a mini-bot to have a internal combustion engine, and there were several fires.
Okay, good. Thanks, Jeff, for the answer. I think next question, actually, it is often the confusing point. Maybe we can go to that one.
What are the major differences between blocking and playing defense? That is a fantastic question. It comes down to, at the end of the day, what the referee thought your intent was, which is very challenging for us to figure out. We lose, I lose sleep over it sometimes. If it looks like so one rule of thumb that we go by is, if you are trying to play offense and you wind up blocking somebody, we will typically let it slide. If it looks like you're playing defense and you turned out to block somebody, we will probably penalize that. That is the clearest guideline I've gotten from the Game Design Committee about this sort of thing.
Yeah, our general guideline, not saying if any specific rule contradicts this, then we can't follow it, but we generally, if you're trying to score, we don't want you to get penalized for scoring, generally.
Right.
There are some weird rules about like entering certain areas that have to be worried about all the time, but generally, if you're in the act of scoring, you're not trying to do anything wrong, you shouldn't generally get a penalty.
Yeah, the things that we get is where you have a robot and they're not going to a scoring area to collect game pieces or making a score, and it's obvious they're trying to prevent the opponent robot, and they're either blocking a particular location or sometimes moving and keeping themselves in pace of that robot constantly, which then becomes a shadow blocking maneuver. And they're doing it strictly because they can't score anything, so they're going to prevent the other team from scoring. So according to from the game committee's design concept, they don't want teams to spend their time on defense. So technically, you better not be getting in front of your opponent's robot. There is rough play, there is pushing from the sides, but you do not get between them and their thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you agree with that, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rennie, do you have anything to add?
Well, I was just looking at the wording of the question. Blocking is a subset of playing defense, right? So there's it says the major differences between that. So I didn't quite understand why they thought blocking was different than defense.
I think they're talking about the pinning, blocking, trapping penalty.
Right. And all of those are something that people will view as defense. So, blocking just a subset of defense.
Yeah, I think the real key is just to look at the definitions in the book and make sure you understand what blocking is, what pinning is, what trapping is. So you cannot do those things. There are some very slim cases where there's legal defense, but knowing what those real blocking, pinning, and trapping are is important.
Yeah, the key about the blocking one is you have to be blocking all the paths, not just the best path to, getting from A to B. And so that's the key on the blocking one. You got to be blocked, you and your partner probably you would have, or with the single robot, it's like you're playing a moving pick, if you know basketball. If you're shadowing that other robot moving back and forth, that's definitely going to be called blocking. At any one time, you're only blocking one path, but you're constantly doing it, and it's that that'll get called if you're doing a moving pick. All right.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think the next question is popped up. I think it's also very interesting. They keep on changing, and yeah, I think we already answered these questions. I think, right? Like with the
Most common ways the teams get penalties, yes, that's for not playing the rules.
So to the next question that about the human player, which is the new element this season. Yeah, what do you guys think about that?
The complication that it created is the human players reaching into the field. And the way the field was set up, there was always going to be interaction with the other team. They would have to, at some point, be close enough where they would cross into that area. And the rules, this is one of the things that Jeff pointed out, the rules kind of changed and morphed as the year went on this particular. In the very beginning, it was like almost automatic major if you went across through it, and they sort of stretched it away to more inadvertent or inconsequential or just plain inconsequential. The human player is more of a safety piece here, because many of the robots that have evolved over the years, if anybody saw effects in 2006 or something like that, you see slow moving robots going across the field. And now we have these high powered robots that just go zoom across. So think of somebody sticking a block out, and not only are they putting down the square, they're putting out as close to the edge of the square as possible so their teammate can get. Meanwhile, the other team is flying right by and would be coming through that spot at the same time. So you get close calls, and I think we even had an accident in the one competition set. So those are the complications. It's just making sure that the human player understands their safety, because they have to be safe themselves, not put themselves in harm's way. At the same time, teams with robots need to be watchful as well. Any other feelings, guys?
Yeah, because a bunch of things were going in the depot, and for the people that don't know this past season's game, the depot was up front near the audience, and usually, the preferred thing is the referees don't get in the way of the audience. But when I was ever a head ref this year, I always made sure I was up front, because not only did I have the two humans up front, but we had this GS6 rules about who could go into the depot. And I wanted to make sure I was barking out, immediately to the teams. That was the other complicating thing was each team was allowed to go in like once, and you could get a warning per match. And, I wanted those people getting the warning as fast as I could get it out so they didn't do it again, and try to protect the two human players. So I always parked myself in one of the two front corners. And that's pretty much how I spent most of the match, was just watching, is that human hand. The other thing is the humans were putting in these stones, these stones, and they were very slow a lot of times, and they'd leave their hand down there. And I'd bark at them, let it go, get your hand out of there. So that added a lot more stress, just because the humans were in putting themselves in danger constantly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that since we start a little late, would you guys mind just answer a couple more questions?
Yeah, we can answer a few more.
Okay, so then, so the next question is that, do you feel that way, that they have like a little bit more penalty this year?
So I feel like, so I've been doing FTC, this is my 12th season, I believe, or 13th, something like that. I get this question pretty much every year. That being said, there is one area where we called a lot more penalties, and it was anything involving the human player. We were not willing to put the student or their hand at risk. So we called a lot more penalties around that.
Agreed. In fact, in the beginning of the season, we're very strict, and a lot of yellow cards were given out to get the teams. After first 2 or 3 competitions in Maryland, they seemed to simmer down. And then they start changing the rules, but by then the teams got pinned.
Let's see. So one thing that nobody did ask, if you're going to ask a question, if you read the rules early, like the day of kickoff is when most teams start reading the rules. But if you don't read it that early, that's fine. If you want to read the rules and you see something that you have an issue with or a question about and it just doesn't make sense to you, I would suggest asking that question on the forums as early as possible. Why? Because part of the way that they think about how they're going to answer these questions is they want to give the most meaningful answers as early as possible in the year, because I'm going to pick on Michigan. Michigan likes to keep their FRC season and their FT season completely separate. And as a result, FRC has their kickoff day. It's the first Saturday of the new year. It's the same time every year, which means they have to have their FTC state championship by Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. And once that starts happening, once states start having their state championships, the game design committee does not want to make any big decisions about how they're going to change rules, because some teams have already qualified for the world championship based on a certain set of rules that now will change, between their state championship and the world championship, which that's not really fair to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So the game design committee tries to minimize that amount. Meanwhile, in Maryland and Virginia, we've barely gotten our season started by Christmas. So it's really to your advantage to ask those questions as early as possible in the year. October or November is a great time to ask them.
Mm-hmm.
I could think of something that was a big deal where a team had to put up a video poster with their robot doing autonomous, because there was a number of referees that interpreted very strictly that they were pushing too many objects at once in autonomous, even though it was part of their mechanism to get the intended goal scoring piece. So that the game decision committee was able to put out what the reference was, so that team wouldn't be penalized every time the robot did that maneuver.
Cool.
Oh, and one thing I want to mention about if you make a post on the FTC forum, which I saw a question further down, how do we post to it? It is ftcforums.firstinspires.org. FTC forums with an S. .firstinspires.org. When you post a question, your question is immediately hidden. The only people who can see it are the game design committee and people who work for First, which is nobody on this call. Then they meet, they discuss all the questions, and they come up with an answer as a committee. And then they will post their answer, and they will likely also lightly edit your question because they understand that a lot of these are being written by children, and they want to make sure that they're answering specifically what the kid was trying to ask and remove room for confusion or minimize room for confusion. So if you're not exactly sure how to word something, don't worry about it. The game design committee will read your question, interpret your question, make any edits they think you meant to make but didn't quite get around to, and then post the answers.
Great.
I did put in the chat room the address for the FTC forum.
Okay, good. Thanks for the information. I think maybe like 2 more questions, and I think you will love to hear the next question, which when you will get the volunteers.
When can you start volunteering as a judge or a referee? So if you look at the volunteer manual, you must be 21 years old to be a referee and separated by a team by 3 years. In Virginia, they will follow that to the letter. At the World Championships, they follow that to the letter. Maryland, we try to follow it to the letter, but sometimes we have to fudge it a little bit because we don't have enough volunteers. So I did probably 10 or, yeah, I think I did 10 events this year. In Maryland, 2 or 3 of them had students who were still in high school as referees. We try to avoid that, but if we don't have enough volunteers, then we take what we got. And sometimes it comes down to a decision of, would we rather have this parent who's never seen the game before in their life, or this student who is on a team, they know the rules extremely well, arguably better than some of us or all of us, and their team is not competing here. So we make a judgment call, and frequently we will wind up taking the kid.
I'm not sure that's what the question here is. It's when can you start training? And I would say you can start training the day that Manual 2 comes out, and you can, the game is announced, and you can get your hands on Manual 2 and see that. You can start reading it if you really want to volunteer and be well based. Is go read that Manual number 2. Usually the way I then do it's Virginia has events first. I sign up for the very first Virginia event, and they'll send me the thing, and I'll say, hey, I want to be a referee. Then they'll come back. So I'm in the VIMS, the volunteer system. I say, I want to volunteer to be a referee. They will send me then links to get the training, right? You got to take a test. We didn't talk about that. There's like a 30-question test to be a referee, to be certified as a referee, and like a 36-question test to be a head referee. So the training can sort of happen right away if you read the manual inside and out a couple times, and then you get the official training. You watch some videos, so you can start training very early in the season. At least the training to be a referee or head referee, not top secret at all. Like Randy was saying, as soon as you volunteer, submit your application to be a referee or a head referee, you will get, normally it takes until October or so, but if you apply in November, you will automatically get a link to take the referee or head referee training. And if you're a student on a team, I would definitely recommend knowing Game Manual Part 2 like the back of your hand before you go into the referee training, but there is absolutely no reason that students should not take the training. It would definitely help.
Okay.
Yes,
so
and
maybe
sorry.
No, sorry, Kaylin, go ahead. Sorry.
If a mentor posted this, it's great for mentors to volunteer as referees So when your team is not competing, so that you know all the rules and you can give your students a little insight on what it's like to be a referee. Some hands-on experience never hurts.
Mhm. Okay, so next question seems like a game design question instead of a referee question. So maybe we will end with the question like, what are the difficult parts of being a referee?
The difficult parts of being a referee, a lot of the rules are written so that it leaves things up for the referee to interpret, where we have to figure out what the student's intention was. And the best way I've ever come up with to answer that is it's really difficult for us to figure out what they're trying to do because, you know, I hope nobody takes offense at this, but we're talking about teenagers here. 9 times out of 10, they don't know what they're trying to do. They're just doing stuff. So if they don't know what they're doing, it's really difficult for me to know what they were trying to do.
Yeah,
I mean, that's basically, you could talk to them, ask them what they were doing, and then explain to them how you saw it. And then the referee just makes a decision. Is it necessary to give them a penalty or give them a one-time warning for the event? You know, depending on the impact it has made on the scoring of the game and the outcome. So those are things that get to be real tough, is trying to figure it out. The other thing that gets being tough about being a referee is a lot of time the pace is very heavy, and we are nonstop from the moment they kick off. Especially if we're hopping fields, right, Jeff?
Yes, absolutely. One thing that's nice about having 4 head referees instead of, I mean, for 2 or 3 years, it was just me and Paul. It means that we can have a head referee on every single field. So we actually get 2 or 3 minutes to breathe between matches, as opposed to, you know, when it was just the 2 of us, you may have 5 matches in the day. We have 50. And I don't want to ignore this next question because it got several votes, but we don't have to spend much time on it. Are you allowed to use pneumatic engines that's pumped by legal motors? No, pneumatics are not legal in FTC.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think the so the rest questions we will we'll try to answer in the Google Doc, and that's what for the last couple of panels we're doing. So I want to closing by first thanks everybody on the call to sacrifice your weekend like Friday evening to answer questions. And I think we're going to also, for the audience, we're going to send a evaluation survey to see how we're doing and how it can improve in the future. And this virtual format is also a new format for us. So we apologize for some technical difficulties at the beginning. And by that, I think I want to wish everybody stay safe and healthy and have a good weekend.
okay.
Well, yeah, I think our team will send out the survey later. Thanks, everybody. It was a great session.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Happy-
Have fun.
I'll do it again if we want another one.
Don't forget that game manual part 2.
Part 1's good. Also, I'd read that too.
Both.